It was meant to be a night of recognition, a celebration, a stage lit for reflection, honor, and inspiration. The MLK, Junior Beloved Community Awards have always carried a weight beyond the applause. They are a moment when public figures step into a space of remembrance, of moral reckoning, and of visibility. And on that night, January 2026, the world was watching. Or at least, it thought it was. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But then a whisper, a movement, a glance, something small, almost imperceptible, that immediately carried the gravity of something far larger. And suddenly, everything changed. One moment of proximity, one casual, perhaps careless, comment, shifted the dynamics of an entire event, rippling outward in ways that no one could have predicted. By the time the cameras caught it, social media had already begun to catch fire. And yet, what most people saw was only the surface. You might be asking yourself, how does a moment like this even happen? How does a cultural institution, a ceremony grounded in respect and history, become the backdrop for what can only be described as humiliation? And more importantly, why does it matter right now, not just as a fleeting scandal, but as a moment that could redefine public perception, celebrity influence, and cultural expectations? Let's start at the beginning. The MLK, Junior Beloved Community Awards are not just another red carpet affair. They are intentionally, meticulously designed to honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., a legacy that demands reflection on justice, community, and courage. Every year, the awards draw figures from politics, activism, entertainment, and philanthropy. And the air is always thick with anticipation. Who will speak, who will be honored, and, inevitably, what the cameras will capture. The ceremony carries an unspoken rule: composure, dignity, and the weight of history. Breaking that code, even subtly, can echo far beyond the ballroom. On this particular evening, Meghan Markle was among the honorees. Her presence was both symbolic and strategic. She had been increasingly involved in advocacy around women's rights, social justice, and mental health. Her speeches in prior months had drawn attention. Some lauded her for authenticity, others criticized her for perceived posturing. Regardless of personal opinion, her role at this ceremony was highly anticipated. Her speech, as always, was expected to walk the fine line between personal narrative and public responsibility. The weight of every word mattered, and for Meghan, the stakes were unusually high. Billie Eilish, on the other hand, was an unexpected element in this equation. Known for her music, her incisive interviews, and an unfiltered approach to public statements, Billie's attendance at the awards had been reported, but the implications were largely overlooked. Few anticipated that a figure known primarily for her artistry could become the pivot point for a narrative that would quickly dominate media cycles. And yet, as the night would show, proximity alone is sometimes enough to ignite what the world will later describe as a scandal. Let me pause here for a moment. You might wonder why we're framing this with such gravity. After all, celebrity interactions happen all the time. But this was different. The difference wasn't just in the comment or the gesture. It was in context, timing, and consequence. It was in the way small, human moments can be amplified when two powerful figures intersect under scrutiny. And it was in the audience, both live and digital, ready to interpret every inflection, every glance, every pause. So what actually happened in those initial moments? What was whispered? What glance was exchanged? It's almost impossible to convey without seeing it, because the tension was almost microscopic at first. Meghan began her speech with the usual poise, slow, measured, reflective. She acknowledged the award, the audience, and the importance of the evening. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, a voice, soft, near, but pointed, cut through her rhythm. The words were barely audible, but their effect was immediate. You could see it in her eyes, in the way her posture stiffened for a fraction of a second. A micro-expression, a nearly invisible shift in her facial muscles, spoke volumes. And yet, the audience didn't fully register it at first. Only those trained to read such subtleties, the journalists, the photographers, even some of the fellow honorees, could sense the fracture in the moment. Here's where the story deepens. The incident, if we can call it that, didn't unfold in isolation. Social media, of course, became an accelerant. Within minutes, snippets of the event, clips, screenshots, whispered interpretations, began to circulate. Fans, critics, and casual observers alike jumped to conclusions. But as anyone in investigative journalism knows, the first wave of viral reaction is rarely accurate. It's messy, chaotic, and layered with bias. The truth, what actually happened in that room, was both more subtle and far more revealing than the initial headlines suggested. And that's where the stakes come into sharp focus. This is not just about embarrassment. It's about power dynamics, perception management, and the way influence is wielded in public spaces. It's about the unseen forces that shape narratives before the public even knows what's happened. How do a few words, whispered under the radar, become a defining moment for a public figure? How does one celebrity's casual remark evolve into a cultural conversation? These are not trivial questions. They cut to the heart of reputation, agency, and scrutiny in the 21st century. Consider this. There is an irony here that is almost too precise to be coincidental. An award meant to celebrate community, respect, and moral leadership became, for a moment, a stage for tension and unspoken conflict. The very principles being honored, the beloved community, the legacy of Dr. King, clashed with the immediacy of personal rivalry and public spectacle. And it is precisely this tension that makes the incident compelling, not just because it happened, but because it revealed the fragility of public persona under pressure. And yet, what most viewers initially noticed and still focus on is superficial, the video clip, the reaction shots, the social media commentary. But beneath that surface lies a web of subtle cues, backstage whispers, and psychological micro-moments that few will ever dissect. That is where the real story lives. That is where the investigation must start, layer by layer. Because without that context, what the public sees is only half the story, and half-truths have a way of becoming whole narratives when left unchecked. So, by now, you're probably asking, what did Billie actually say? How did Meghan respond, both outwardly and inwardly? Who else noticed? And how did the cameras frame it? And perhaps most importantly, why does any of this matter beyond a single viral clip? These questions will guide our journey through the rest of the story. And the answers, as we'll see, are rarely straightforward. They are messy, human, and revealing in ways that go far beyond the initial shock value. And that brings us to the moment we cannot fully convey yet. The moment when Meghan paused, when her composure wavered for the briefest instant, and when the audience, those paying closest attention, sensed that the evening had subtly shifted. It was a moment of human authenticity, but also one of public exposure. A moment that, in hindsight, would mark the beginning of a ripple effect that would dominate headlines, online discourse, and cultural conversation for days afterward. It begins before the lights hit the stage, before speeches, before applause, even before the first flash of a camera. The energy in the ballroom is already charged, an almost imperceptible tension running beneath the surface. Anyone who's attended high-profile events knows this feeling. The sort of anticipation that's quiet but insistent, like static before a storm. And on this night, that tension carried an extra weight. Not because of Meghan or Billie individually, but because of what happens when worlds collide. The meticulous, curated world of ceremony meets the unpredictability of human personality. The venue itself was grand, but not ostentatious. Polished wood floors, understated lighting, and banners that reminded every guest of the evening's purpose. There's a rhythm to entering a space like this. Security scans, greeting lines, the polite chatter of dignitaries. But even in these early moments, you could feel a subtle hierarchy emerging. Who sits where? Who is introduced first? Who exchanges a glance and smiles? Who does not? It's choreography invisible to most, but crucial to those who watch closely. Guests arrive, elegantly dressed, faces both expectant and measured. Meghan enters quietly, acknowledging a few nods and smiles, but mostly keeping her own pace. Observers note her demeanor, composed, deliberate, but not immune to the nervous energy that laces the room. Her advisors trail subtly behind, checking notes, whispering last-minute reminders. Every step, every glance is calculated, yet human. And this is exactly the kind of subtle environment where the smallest disruption, an offhand comment, a misread gesture, can ripple outward. Billie's entrance is different. Less formal, more instinctive. There's a casual confidence, a disregard for the unspoken codes that govern this space. It isn't rebellion, exactly. It's presence. She scans the room with sharp eyes, acknowledging a few familiar faces, then situating herself near the stage, in a way that positions her close enough to be noticed, but not in direct line with the cameras. That proximity is critical. It sets the stage, quite literally, for what follows. The human brain notices closeness, even if it isn't consciously registering it. As the evening progresses toward the official start, murmurs ripple through the room. Whispers about who will speak first, who might sit beside whom. Camera crews position themselves. Social media managers snap photos and post early impressions. There's an unspoken understanding. Tonight's moments will be captured, analyzed, and shared within minutes. But few anticipate which moments will dominate that narrative. The room, in these early moments, is a microcosm of public perception itself, a carefully orchestrated presentation layered over unpredictable human behavior. Even before Meghan steps to the podium, the room is alive with subtle cues. Body language, micro-expressions, the way hands rest on the edge of tables, the tilt of a head. These are all signals, often unnoticed by casual observers, but telling to those trained to read them. Meghan's entrance is measured, her gaze scanning the audience briefly, registering recognition, warmth, skepticism. She acknowledges the cameras with a practiced nod, the sort that bridges authenticity and performance. And yet, underneath that composure, there is tension, a human tension, almost imperceptible, but palpable to those paying attention. Then there is the auditory environment, the quiet hum of conversation, the soft click of heels, the rustle of programs. And somewhere in that hum, there is the first imperceptible moment where disruption could occur. Not overtly, not dramatically, but quietly. A whispered comment, a glance from the wrong angle, a recognition of proximity that unsettles. It's the kind of moment that seems trivial at first. It seems inconsequential. But human interactions, especially in high-stakes environments, are rarely neutral. Even the smallest spark can ignite attention, and in this room, attention was a combustible element. Billie's presence, in particular, begins to influence the dynamics without anyone realizing it fully. Observers note a shift in Meghan's focus, subtle but observable. Not a confrontation yet, just an awareness of proximity and potential. Meghan's advisors lean in, whispering quietly. A photographer adjusts an angle. A security official shifts position. The room is a theater, and every movement, every adjustment, is part of the choreography. Yet, unpredictably, the human element always finds a way to insert itself. As the prelude continues, there is an almost cinematic quality to the gathering. Guests are lining up, not only physically but socially. Alliances, old acquaintances, professional networks. They are all visible in the way people approach one another, exchange pleasantries, and settle into seats. These are the invisible undercurrents of power, perception, and expectation. And the thing about undercurrents is that they are rarely noticed until they surface dramatically, and when they do, everyone is forced to react. By the time Meghan steps onto the stage, the tension has coalesced into a quiet, almost tangible presence. The applause is polite but warm. The room is aware, at some level, of the significance of what is about to be said. And yet, there is an undercurrent, almost a whisper in the collective consciousness of the room, that something is poised to disrupt the expected flow. It is the tiniest misalignment of expectation, the slightest moment of human unpredictability that promises to ripple outward. And then there is Billie, positioned almost strategically, if unintentionally, near enough to be noticed, but not close enough to draw attention. It is a proximity that seems irrelevant at first glance, but human attention is sensitive to proximity. Body language begins to register, subtle shifts in gaze occur, micro-expressions flicker across faces. These are the moments that cameras rarely catch, social media often ignores, but that matter most in shaping how the event will later be interpreted. In those early seconds, before words are spoken, the room has set the stage for what will unfold. There is energy, tension, anticipation, and unpredictability, all coexisting. Observers might describe it as electric, others as delicate. Both are true, and it is in this fragile, charged atmosphere that the first true fissures of the story will emerge. The tension isn't yet visible in the viral clips, nor in the social media commentary that follows, but it is there, quietly building, like the pause before a heartbeat spikes. But what happens when poised control meets unfiltered presence? What happens when expectation meets subtle provocation? What happens when a room prepared for ceremony is suddenly confronted by the smallest human disruption with outsized consequences? These are the questions that will guide the rest of this story. And the answer, while partially visible in the moments that follow, will unfold more dramatically than anyone in that room, or watching remotely, could have imagined. And just as the audience leans forward, anticipating the first word of the speech, the first ripple begins. A glance, a shift in weight, a whisper, almost imperceptible, almost ignorable, but it will not be ignored.